The night shift begins. Paul leaned against the counter, tapping his fingers on the old, cracked register. Another quiet night at the 7-Eleven. Empty aisles, humming refrigerators, and a flickering fluorescent light that never seemed to get fixed. He glanced at the clock. 2:17 a.m. 2 more hours to go. The only sounds were the buzzing light and the low hum of the ice cream freezer. Paul yawned, stretching his arms above his head. He had taken this night shift gig to pay off some debt. Nothing glamorous, just endless hours of boredom and the occasional drunk customer stumbling in for instant noodles or a pack of cigarettes. Tonight, though, felt different. There was a weird heaviness in the air, like the store itself was breathing. He shrugged it off and pulled out his phone, scrolling through his feed without much interest. A noise broke the silence, a rustling sound from the chips aisle. Paul peeked over the counter, squinting into the dimness. Nothing, just a few bags of snacks on the floor. Sighing, he left the counter and walked over to clean up. Probably just fell on their own, he muttered, kneeling to pick up the scattered chips. As he restocked the shelf, a cold shiver ran down his spine. He stood up too quickly, nearly slipping on a crumpled receipt. Looking around, he saw no one, just rows of perfectly lined snacks. Back at the counter, Paul rewound the CCTV footage on the small, grainy monitor. He squinted at the screen, watching the chip aisle. At first, nothing seemed out of place. Then, just as he was about to give up, the bags tumbled down, without anyone touching them. "What the hell?" he whispered, leaning closer. The footage glitched for a moment, and he could swear he saw a faint shadow slide past the shelves. Goosebumps prickled his arms. The store door chimed, and Paul jumped. A man with greasy hair and a stained jacket shuffled in, not meeting Paul's eyes. Paul forced a smile. Evening. The man grunted in response and headed to the back to grab a bottle of water. Paul watched him carefully, trying to shake off the uneasy feeling. As the man approached the counter, Paul rang him up. "That'll be 30 pesos, Paul said. The man just stared at him for a moment, then dug through his pockets, pulling out some crumpled bills. He seemed nervous, glancing over his shoulder like someone was watching him. When Paul handed him the change, the man hesitated. "You see them too?" the man whispered. Paul's heart skipped a beat. "See what?" The man gave a shaky laugh, stuffing the money in his pocket. "Never mind." He hurried out, the door chiming behind him. Paul glanced back at the CCTV, feeling a chill run through him. As he stared at the screen, he noticed something else. More snacks were missing from the shelf. His eyes widened. He hadn't heard a single noise this time. Feeling unsettled, he walked back to the aisle, counting the rows of chips and biscuits. At least 5 packs were gone, vanished without a trace. He turned around and almost yelled. An old homeless man stood near the door and with milky eyes. "They're hungry," the old man said, voice rasping. "They never stop being hungry." Paul swallowed hard. "What are you talking about?" The old man just grinned, showing yellow, broken teeth. "You'll see." Then he shuffled out into the night, leaving Paul alone with the hum of the machines and the flickering light. As Paul tried to calm his nerves, he couldn't shake the feeling that someone or something was still watching him. He forced himself back to the counter, breathing heavily. A soft crunch made him freeze. Slowly, he turned his head toward the chips aisle. One of the bags had been ripped open, crumbs scattered on the floor. Nobody was there. Paul's hands shook as he picked up his phone to call his manager. Just as he dialed, the power flickered, plunging the store into darkness. In the blackness, he heard whispering, faint, hungry voices echoing through the aisles. Paul wiped the sweat off his forehead, his hands still trembling from the blackout earlier. The power had come back on minutes later, but the silence that followed was heavier than before. He glanced at the CCTV screen again, his eyes darting between the aisles, but everything seemed normal, except for the gnawing feeling that it wasn't. He took a deep breath, trying to convince himself it was just fatigue playing tricks on him. Night shifts could mess with anyone's head. To distract himself, he started wiping down the counter, humming softly to break the uneasy quiet. A loud crash made him jump. He spun around, heart pounding. One of the drink displays had toppled over, bottles rolling across the floor. Paul cursed under his breath and hurried over to pick them up, carefully setting them back on the rack. As he knelt down to grab the last bottle, he caught movement out of the corner of his eye, a faint, blurry shape gliding past the snacks aisle. He whipped his head around, but there was nothing there. Just rows of untouched merchandise. Paul clenched his jaw, gripping the bottle so tight his knuckles turned white. "Stop being paranoid," he told himself. "Just some faulty shelving and a tired brain." Back behind the counter, he checked the CCTV again, rewinding to see the moment the display fell. His stomach tightened when he saw it, an empty aisle 1 second, and then the rack just tipping over on its own. Just as the bottles hit the floor, there was a brief flicker on the screen, a dark, vague silhouette, barely visible, just for a split second. Paul rubbed his eyes, convinced he was imagining things. He was about to give up and let it slide when a loud bang echoed from the back storage room. Heart thundering in his chest, he hesitated, debating whether to check it out or just call the manager. Gathering his nerve, Paul grabbed the store's flashlight and cautiously approached the storage door. The room was cluttered with boxes of instant noodles, canned goods, and cleaning supplies. He clicked on the flashlight, sweeping the beam across the shelves. Nothing seemed out of place, but the sense of being watched made his skin crawl. Just as he turned to leave, he heard it, a whisper, so faint he almost didn't catch it. Turning the flashlight back, he saw the same old homeless man from earlier standing in the doorway, grinning that unsettling grin. "You're seeing them now, aren't you?" the old man rasped, his voice like gravel. Paul froze, mouth dry. "What do you mean?" Paul managed to say, his voice shaking. The old man shuffled closer, his milky eyes locked on Paul's. "They're trapped here, died hungry, never got out." He laughed, a harsh, broken sound. "Long time ago, robbers, store locked down during the heist. No one came, they starved." Paul's stomach twisted. "You're saying they're still here?" The old man just nodded, his grin never faltering. "They never stop eating, but it doesn't fill them. Always hungry, always searching." Before Paul could respond, the old man turned and shuffled back out the door, his figure fading into the night. Paul's thoughts raced, trying to piece together what he had just heard. Was the guy just insane, or was there some twisted truth to his story? Suddenly, the chips aisle erupted in chaos. Bags flew off the shelves, scattering like a whirlwind. Paul stumbled backward, his breath catching in his throat. He watched, horrified, as more items fell, cookies, snacks, and instant noodles all tossed to the floor by invisible hands. Fighting the panic rising in his chest, Paul grabbed his phone and dialed his manager's number. It rang 3 times before going to voicemail. He tried again, same result. The silence that followed was suffocating, broken only by the soft rustling of plastic wrappers on the floor. Paul wiped sweat from his forehead, unable to tear his gaze from the mess. He took a shaky breath and mumbled to himself, "This isn't real, I'm just tired." But deep down, he knew something was very, very wrong. His phone buzzed, startling him, and he glanced at the screen, a text from an unknown number. The message read, "They're hungry, feed them." Paul dropped the phone, his hands trembling. He swallowed hard, forcing himself to look around the store. In the reflection of the glass door, he saw them, faint outlines of shadowy figures, clustered around the fallen snacks, moving like distorted shapes in a dark fog. A chill settled over him as he realized the truth. The store wasn't empty. It never had been. The store was quieter than usual. Paul glanced at the clock. It was almost 3 a.m. The air felt heavier, pressing down on him like an invisible weight. He wiped the counter with a dirty rag, trying to distract himself from the unsettling feeling crawling up his spine. Suddenly, the sound of bags crinkling caught his attention. His head snapped up, eyes darting to the snack aisle. Chips and candy scattered on the floor, as if tossed by an unseen hand. Paul swallowed hard, forcing himself to move closer. He didn't see anyone, just the mess left behind. His heart pounded in his chest. He bent down to pick up a crumpled bag of chips, and that's when he saw it. A dark, shifting silhouette stood at the end of the aisle, almost human but not quite. It flickered like a bad TV signal, fading in and out of existence. Paul froze, mouth dry, as the figure seemed to stare right at him. though it had no eyes, just a vague blur where a face should be. Then it was gone. Paul stumbled backward, nearly dropping the chips. He rushed to the counter, hands trembling as he flipped through the CCTV footage. The screen showed nothing but the aisles, empty, quiet, as if nothing had happened. He slammed his hands on the counter, frustration boiling over. "What the hell is going on?" he whispered, more to himself than anyone else. Just then, the door chime jingled. Paul whipped around to see the old homeless man from before hobbling inside. The man's eyes were wide, filled with terror. "They're restless tonight," the old man muttered. "I warned you, didn't I?" Paul hesitated. What do you mean? What are they?" The old man looked at him with pity, shaking his head. "Spirits, hungry ones. Died here when the store got locked down during that robbery. They were trapped inside. No food, no water. They starved right where you stand." Paul's mind reeled. He remembered the story, the infamous robbery years ago. 3 people had been stuck inside overnight, and by the time help arrived, it was too late. Why are they still here?" Paul stammered. The old man shrugged. "Hungry souls don't just move on. They crave what they lost, food, warmth, life. But they can't touch it, can't taste it. Just endless hunger." Paul looked around the store, suddenly aware of how cold it felt. He could almost hear faint whispers, like low moans of agony. "What do I do?" he asked, desperation creeping into his voice. The old man gave him a sad smile. "You feed them. Not with food, but with an offering. Show them respect. Light a candle. Leave something out. Let them know they're remembered." As the old man left, Paul glanced at the counter and found a dusty box of tea lights from the bargain bin. With shaking hands, he lit one and placed it on the counter, alongside a fresh pack of chips and a bottled drink. Hours passed without incident. The air seemed lighter somehow, and Paul almost felt a sense of relief. But just as dawn broke, he noticed the candle had burned out, and the snacks were gone. A chill ran down his spine as he spotted faint handprints on the counter, too small and too many to belong to just one person. He knew then that he wasn't alone. Not tonight. Not ever. As he turned to restock the shelves, he caught a glimpse of his own reflection in the store window, tired, haunted, and somehow changed.